where he's getting at. Thank everybody for coming, and most of all, thank Ian for
He just came out.
everybody for coming, and most of all, thank Ian
He just came out.
for volunteering to help out, and Bob for volunteering to help out, and for our videographer, Mr. Tim, helping out.
Bracket stuff, that kind of thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah, stick to some basic stuff. And we'd like to start with asking questions.
Why are hills so difficult to climb? Basic stuff.
So the physics. So with that, fire away with questions.
Yeah, we'll open questions first.
I have a question. So I have an inner tube that was patched once, and now it's leaking at the patch. Can I repatch it, or do I need a new tube? Do I need to pitch it or patch it?
So
I like that.
Pitch
it
or patch it. So officially you should get a new tube,
Okay.
especially if it's leaking at the patch.
Okay.
If you things to keep in your saddlebag, that's definitely something that's good to have for roadside repair. CO2's like a lot of people use CO2 to pump up their tires after they change their tires and everything. That way, because you can either carry a hand pump or use CO2. I carry CO2 with me. I always carry a CO2 cartridge, an applicator, which is what we call a little thing that screws on, CO2 applicator, a spare tube, a patch kit if I'm running tubeless, tire levers, and various other small things that you might need, dollar bill, that kind of stuff. But yeah, definitely would recommend it for roadside repair. You don't want to just be filling your tires up with that on the regular though. CO2 is a smaller molecule than air is, and it leaks out of your tires, your tubes, faster. So if you're doing that regularly, I would not recommend it. Pump up your tires with air and use that as an emergency. Yeah.
For the valve stem, you have to put that on that tool first before you apply to the valve stem, right?
Yes, yeah, you're going to thread the CO2 into the tool first, and you'll likely hear it hiss and connect, so you know the CO2 is flowing, or you'll just thread it as much as it'll go and it'll stop, and then you want to put it on. That way your CO2 is already there. I tire up and then go like do a whole ride. It's I need to get home or finish the ride, so like you can run out of CO2. It's finite, however many you carry with you, so how many you got. With a hand pump, you can pump as hard, as long as you want to.
So my bike has a carbon seat post, and I have a bike stand similar to that. And I'm always really nervous about. I know you're not supposed to crank down on it in the stand, but how tight can you go on those without risking damage? Like,
It's a tricky question because you obviously, I don't expect you have like a Newton meter force gauge on your, so I would say you can go snug to where it doesn't move. Definitely don't, if you're, we used to use a rule for most bike parts in general when we don't have a torque meter called the 2-finger rule. If you can't move with 2 fingers, it's too much force. If you're doing it at home and you're just throwing up in a stand, you're fine clamping around the frame, especially on aluminum bikes. You're not going to super damage it, or you're not going to damage it at all just by clamping it. It's more of like the what if scenarios, right? Get a rag, put it around the frame, put the clamp around the frame. Bob's Bike Detailing. There you go. You got all the good stuff. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Cool. So we're gonna spray it with this. We're gonna brush the loosen up the grime that's on it. Spray it again to get the grime off. We're gonna dry it, let it dry for a bit. Then we're gonna apply some lube on. It takes a minute, so I'm gonna kind of do an expedited process just to kind of get the gist of it. So rag, shop rag. We usually have an abundance of shop rags around, so we would just take shop rags and do something like this, and you would basically just block off the disc brake as much as you can, cover as much of it as possible. We'll just go ahead and spray the chain with some degreaser. We'll keep going, keep going. That's good for right now. Okay, so we've got a bunch of grime off of that. Now we'll take the tool here and we'll kind of go through again. Thank you. And just kind of make sure we get all the way around like that, and then kind of get all inside of the tool, the chain. And the brush that I have is just a tiny little, it looks almost like a big toothbrush, but it's a Park Tool one. You can use a toothbrush, like obviously not one that you're going to plan on using, but make sure, so you can already see how much cleaner that is. And then you would essentially repeat that process a couple times. So every time you spray it, agitate some of the grit, and then rub it through the towel, it'll take more off. But as you do that, obviously the thing you're rubbing it through gets dirtier, so it's less effective at taking it off. So then you stop, brush off some of it, apply more, spray, keep going through. But you want to get it as clean as you can within reason. Another thing to do while you're cleaning your drivetrain that a lot of people don't do and skip is if you can see right here along the teeth and along the pulley chains, I'll try to back up so people can see. You can see how much grit there is just caked on those pulley chains, and that causes a lot of resistance and a lot of friction. It'll also get your chain dirty, again, really fast. So what you want to do is, again, take some clean streak or some solvent, spray those, just kind of brush that off, get that nice and clean. You'll notice a huge difference just from that in the way that it feels, especially when shifting, because these are major components in the way that your bike shifts. And if they're clunky and clogged up, it can really affect that. Remove that. Take it. Run it through all your gears. Make sure it's shifting well. This is also a good time to adjust your derailleur if you need to. But basically what you're doing here is, because you're dripping it on one side of your rollers, you're making the chain has a bunch of, each of these rollers spins freely to reduce the friction. You're making that spin, and basically it's coating itself in the lubricant. So once you do that a couple times, get that all good, you'll then take that same rag and just pedaling it backwards. I want to use a cleaner side than the one I'm using. You'll just kind of lightly put the rag over the chain and then just run it through and wipe off the excess. Basically, when you take your hand away from the chain, it shouldn't be wet. You should be able to feel your chain, and you can, if you feel in here, you should be able to feel like, yeah, it's lubricated, but it shouldn't be wet. If it's dripping or if there's any kind of like extra lube on here, you want to get that off. Again, it will attract grease to your chain. And then you're done, right? Again, I would spend a little bit more time cleaning it first off, because that's really where your basis is basically getting all of the grease and grime off. That's what we're going to see. We're going to feel the difference. And then when you put the lube on, it's protecting your chain, it's keeping your friction down. A lot of the chains will also try to repel grit and grime if they can, depending on what kind of level chain you use. This is a dry lubricant, so it's got that Teflon coating that I was talking about. So this chain actually, if you feel the rollers, won't feel very wet, and that's because it's coated with Teflon now. It's like a dry ceramic coating. What I would do though is I wipe it off a little soon. I would let it roll it around, let it sit for a bit, and then
something I've noticed on quite a few rides when there's usually a flat on the rear, people are, if you could show the mechanics of getting the wheel out of the derailleur and back in.
Yeah. So I'll probably get in the front gears because it'll be the easiest for getting it back in. It gives you the most slack here while also keeping your chain line. You can go front small, that also works too, but the more angled your chain line is, it gets a little bit wonkier. The general gist of it is taking out the axle. I'm holding this in place because you don't want to just like let it flop everywhere. That's going to get kind of messy, and also you want to avoid damaging things if you can. So you take your axle out, you put this in your pocket or put it aside, put it in your jersey pocket. You're going to take your hand on the derailleur. You're going to force the derailleur as open as you can get it, and this just slides out. And then you can let this go now, and then you just unhook that, and that's out. And then you do change your tire.
It's really not that easy.
I know, mine never
It
comes
looks
off.
so easy.
Never comes off.
Does it so often.
Yeah. Bob knows.
Maybe this.
So now getting it back in, this one is harder than getting it back out, but you're just going to do the exact opposite. You're going to take this, put it in here, you're going to loop the bottom one around it. That's one thing people mess up a lot, is they just go straight up and they catch the bottom of the chain up here, and you're never going to get your tire in that, your wheel in that way. Remember, there has to be a part above your cassette and below your cassette. Then you do the same thing. You push your derailleur out of the way. It'll be easier on you if you line up if you get your chain as close to the position you left it in as you took it out. So the reason I can't get it back in right now is because it's not. So you get it here. So on the disc brake, one thing you got to keep in mind is lining up the disc with your calipers so it slots back in. I've seen people try to jam it back in because they used to rim brake, and what they're not noticing, they're like, why isn't it going in? Like, it's out of the way of the derailleur, I'm not hitting anything. It's because the disc brake is hitting the caliper. So, not disc brake, sorry. When you're doing rim brake bikes, another thing is that your tire is semi-spherical, so it bulges out a little bit. What that does is it'll get caught on the calipers as you try to take it out. If you try to take out normally when it's flat, there's nothing there, so it comes out really easy. you pump up your tire, and then you try to put it back in. You're like, why won't it go in? It's because it won't go back through the calipers. Most calipers have a release right here. It's shaped like a little teardrop. Flip that up, and it opens up your calipers a little bit. But basically, you open this up. It allows more room. You'll take this, open this up. Again, you want to open the derailleur. You want to pull straight out, and then you unlip, unlip the bike like that. Then you, again, put it back in. Always loop the bottom chain over the cassette. You need one side of the chain on each side of the cassette. You're gonna want to do the same thing where you take the derailleur, force it open, push this through, and then this. So if you notice it won't go in, it's because the quick release was not lined up. So sometimes because this axle has to go around the frame, it's longer than the width of the wheel and it can move side to side. All you have to do is kind of shimmy it around until it falls in. And then again, tighten it a little bit, just enough to where pushing down the lever is difficult, but not too difficult. And you're good.
Somebody just put sustaining it as well, so thanks.
Good. Okay, well, again, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Didn't want to cut it short, but it's getting dark.
I'm getting cold. I'm a sissy.
You're getting cold. Laura's about to freeze to death.